recording? Yes. So look surprised for the camera when I say that. So I didn't plan to come to DrupalCon Amsterdam. I have a wife and kids. And I travel quite a lot, and I mean, I want to still have a wife and kids and come back, so I didn't plan. And some time ago, I saw a Twitter by a guy, I don't remember exactly who, asking the Drupal Association, is there a projector in the BOF room? And the answer was no, there's no projector because BOF rooms are meant for discussion, not for presentation. So I went to see in the DrupalCon Amsterdam guidelines about the BOF, and I actually saw that's part of the guideline. You're not actually allowed to do presentation in a BOF. That day I bought my ticket to DrupalCon Amsterdam, and I'm going to do a presentation in the BOF. Until yesterday, where I saw Holly Ross, the director of the Drupal Association, talking about it, and suddenly I had a face in front of me. I got intimidated and a little paranoid, and I mean, you know, the Drupal Association, they know stuff. So it's not going to be a presentation. It's going to be an open discussion. Maybe somebody has a question. Yes, Howard?
I was wondering if you had opinions on headless Drupal.
Oh, wow, what a great question. Yeah, I have an answer for that. It will take me about 25 minutes to answer. Took a shit long time to prepare. But I actually thought there's not going to be a projector. So today what I want to talk about, and I just used the word headless to get you in. If it was still cool to say cloud, I would say headless on the cloud. We're going to talk a bit about headless, but basically what I want to share with you is 3 different concepts that we're applying, and in the end maybe we'll reach some conclusion. So about 2 years ago, I wanted to redo the Gizra.com site, and I just came across Jekyll, and I kind of understood what it was. It's a static site generator. Basically, you write your own HTML, plus it allows you some fancy stuff like some Markdown and including some small HTML snippets, and it's pretty cool. And I kind of immediately love it because it's exactly the opposite of Drupal. I don't want to say I don't like Drupal. I don't know, but I love Jekyll because of its simplicity. But still, I mean, Drupal was my main, you know, it's my weapon of choice. So about 2 years ago, I've set up the Drupal site, and I know how to configure views. I pretty much understand how panels work. I can start theme stuff, and then I started working on building the site. And after a few days, I realized, knowing Jekyll, that it just felt wrong. I mean, it felt so right doing it with Jekyll. And indeed, I neglected Drupal, and nowadays Gizra.com is on Jekyll. But 2 years later, we're now having a certain workflow where we are able to use Jekyll on every Drupal site that we are having. And I would like to share with you how we are doing that. So a typical workflow, a rabbit is fast, so it's like showing that something is working fast here, but bunny isn't fast. So a typical workflow for building a website is you start with the backend, you move on to the theming, and then after a few months, you kind of freeze the database and allow your customer to start adding content. Maybe you can start. You can get in, so you won't. For the viewers at home that can't see, it's a huge room over here. So this is the workflow: the backend, the theme, and then the content. But we realized that at least for our clients, but I think it's correct to say that most clients, that workflow isn't necessarily the right workflow, because I would say that clients, they mostly care about their content. they do care about the theming, meaning how their site will look, and they probably have no interest in the backend. That's why they are paying us to take care of it, right? They don't really care about the content types. I mean, again, I'm talking about the average client. They don't really care if you're using views or don't use views. So for that, we actually thought about how we can reverse that workflow. So instead of having the backend, the theme, and the content, we'll have the content, the theme, and the backend. But once we had this conceptual shift, we realized we don't even need to think about it as a linear workflow, but we can actually have it in parallel. So basically, one developer will work on the markup on Jekyll, meaning Drupal wasn't even set up yet. We're just preparing the same way you're having this PSD to HTML service. We're doing it internally. Some other developer might tackle in the same time exporting, like if it's a migrate site, they will export from the previous site the content into a new table, and another developer, in parallel even to the developer working on the export, can start working on the migration to import the content inside. So basically, to understand the directory structure that we have, we are building, in Gizra, we are building all our projects as installation profile, just like exactly like you are doing, because everybody is following best practices. So we have a folder called Jekyll that we created with a generator called Jekyll RB, which basically is Jekyll wrapped with Grunt, which is a JavaScript task manager that basically can compile Sass to CSS and push your HTML to GitHub pages and so on, and do some cool stuff. So we have the Jekyll folder, we have the profile folder, we have like an installation, a silly installation script, but we have another interesting file over here called build CSS. And why is the reason that we have here? As I said, we start with building the markup in Jekyll, and then we are taking that markup and we put it in Drupal. It means that the client never sees their site broken. We are actually cheating. From day one, they are seeing their site perfect, but it's completely static in Drupal itself. And then bit by bit, we're starting to replace the static parts with the dynamic parts. Why? I think it's also good for the morale of the clients to see their site the way they want to see it. And also for the developers, rather than say, okay, I have the logic and the business logic, it's working perfectly, but then you actually find that you need to start overriding some of the work that you did because it doesn't fit the markup. But then we realized that we have one problem. We started working on the CSS and on Jekyll, and then we move it into the theme that lives in Drupal. So now where do I need to edit my CSS? I have a CSS file in Drupal, right? So it might create some duplication. That's why, again, through more conceptual shifting, we've decided there is only one single canonical place that the CSS can live, and that's the Jekyll. So even if I need to do some CSS adjustment, I will do them in CSS. And just to make sure that no lazy developer opens PHP Storm and says, oh, I see a CSS file and let's start editing it, and again, creating duplication, the CSS file doesn't sit in the Drupal theme itself. It actually sits under libraries. We're actually treating our own custom CSS as if it was country. If that was only theory that I came up with last week, then I would say it doesn't work. But I came up with that 2 weeks ago. No, more than that. I think we're already like 5 or 6 projects down the line using that technique, and we've considerably removed the amount of time that is needed in order to get the markup pixel perfect into the site to fit with the logic.
Can I have a question?
I told you I wanted to make it classic in style.
May I ask something about the first part?
Yes, in the end of the no,
in the end,
in the end, because it's an open discussion, so in the end. Just the fact it's a bathroom doesn't mean it's a bathroom.
Okay.
I'm talking. everything RESTful, and you can really almost hear the word headless gonna pop up.
That was the question.
Yeah. RESTful. So, basically, up until now, we had mainly two solutions. One is services, one is REST-WS. As you can see, I'm not even going to talk about services for all the right reasons, so let's jump to the valid solution, which is REST-WS. I'll tell you my problem with REST-WS. Let's say GitHub, for some obscure reason, decided that they want to have their backend server on Drupal and expose their JSON, their API through REST-WS. So out of the box, I know you can alter it, out of the box, if you go to node/1.json, you get a JSON that looks something like that. The NID is 1, the VID is 1, the type of the node, field underscore UUID, status is 1, meaning the node is published, and the comments is 0. Luckily for us, GitHub have not decided to go with the Drupal on the backend and REST-WS. And the problem that I have with the current solution, with the current JSON that you see, is me as the client that I consume the API, I don't want to know about the word node, doesn't tell me anything. I don't want to know about taxonomy term. Field underscore doesn't tell me anything. Basically, I want to prevent from the JSON to have Drupalism. RESTful is coming with a different concept. A few different concepts, where the idea is, for example, taking a similar example, you would go to API/v1, repository/1, and you will get the ID is 1, the label, and the UUID. Basically, we are exposing only the information that we want in a manner that we would like to consume. Up until here, okay? No. So the key concepts that RESTful is trying to achieve is, first of all, I would say that it should come with best practices, whatever they are. So a best practice is, for example, making the API versionable. So you could have API/v1/v2. This one already nullifies the fact that RESTful is a pure REST implementation, because one URL you can have different output. But we don't really care. Because for us, or for the way Matteo and myself and soon to be Mike are looking at it, is we want to create something that works, that it's fun to work with, it's fun to consume, and not necessarily get the gold medal for being, reaching the holy grail of RESTful. So RESTful itself, by default, when you enable it, you get nothing. It's meant for developers in the sense that if you want to expose one of your resources, you need to declare it. So, for example, REST-WS or REST in Drupal 8, if you enable it, basically all your entities, all your bundles are immediately exposed. RESTful is saying no. If I want to expose just the article content type, I should be allowed to do that without exposing the page content type. And if I want to expose just the ID, or if I have a field UUID, I can map it into something more meaningful that is called UUID without the Drupalism prefix. Apart of that, it's coming with nice features like rate limiting. Again, if we're taking a GitHub example, they allow you to hit their API, let's say 5,000 times. We are allowing a lot of configurability when it comes to rate limiting. So for example, you could say anonymous users can have only 300 write operations, authenticated can have 5,000, and don't limit administrators. We have another cache layer on top of all the entity cache and everything, which is actually a render cache. We are already rendering the output of the RESTful. We have lots of tests, which is always nice for developers to go in, and we have this small thing which is super important, which is called example models, which brings me to talk about the scheme called headless Drupal. So I'm really excited about headless Drupal. Basically, it helped me sell and market Gizra and our effort and everything. But I think that actually we're pretty far from headless, and here I will show you a small experiment. So, not a trick question. I want to show a list in Drupal of nodes sorted by timestamp and show only the published node. Which module should I use? Not a trick question. I ask you answer.
Use.
Yeah, very good. You know your Drupal. Next question, not a trick question, maybe a little trick question. If I want to take care of login and registration and forgot my password, do I need to enable some module or do something? No, I just need Drupal, and that's it. Now let's talk about headless. Everybody is so excited about headless. All our problems will be solved by moving everything to AngularJS. Now, together, I'll ask a question and you will all answer together. What's the name of the Angular component that I need to install in order to do login into my fully decoupled web app?
Doesn't exist.
Nobody fucking knows because I don't know what it is. And I'm maybe writing myself. And that's our biggest problem. That question is actually showing the biggest problem that we have. Headless is fun because we can imagine how we are taking all the complexity of Drupal and shifting it into a new, shiny AngularJS web app. But we don't even know how to do login and registration and forgot my password. Now, I'm not here to rant. I'm here to try and find a solution as part of this open discussion. So I'll present one solution, for example. My solution is keep saying the headless, because that's the holy grail. That's where we are trying to reach. And that's maybe, maybe some companies, so Gizra and Kitchen and Palantir are able to do fully decoupled web apps. It still doesn't mean Drupal can go fully headless, because we're missing the best practices. Same thing we're seeing here. We're missing the best practices in order to reach them. I would like to suggest taking smaller steps. And instead of saying, okay, let's go fully headless decoupled, let's start talking about components that live inside Drupal. If you've seen that blog post I've created about using Angular fields instead of Form API, it lives inside Drupal. For that, we already have an answer. Why do we have an answer? Because I wrote a component which is a good first start, and somebody that actually knows what they're doing maybe can take that code and improve it. But what we're missing is the best practices. How should we call those Angular components, or whatever JavaScript library we decide? What are the naming conventions? Where do we put it? I mean, in Drupal, when I'm seeking for a Drupal model, I know where to find it, in Drupal.org. So what I would like to suggest as an idea, for example, is taking a similar approach to what RESTful model itself is doing. RESTful lives in two places. It lives in Drupal.org, but just the code, no HQQ, no nothing. And the entire development is being done on GitHub. Why? Because it's nicer to work there. I don't need the whole complexity of the issue queue. It's nicer to work with the pull request. However, we are syncing the repository, the GitHub repository, with the Drupal one. Why? Security reasons. Whenever we tag a release, then the security team can audit it for DrupalDL, so it's easier to get the models. But actually, the most important thing is, once it's inside Drupal.org, everybody that goes there understands that this model belongs to Drupal.org. And my suggestion when it comes to headless, or let's call it different components that we're going to build, is, at least to my knowledge, I don't know if there is actually some legal stuff going on there, but I think not. Nothing really implies that the models that we put in Drupal.org need to be PHP models that talk directly with Drupal. We could potentially have our code pushed into GitHub just because it's nicer to develop there, if you like it or not. But let's take our Angular or React.js or whatever it is. Let's take our component and start putting them in Drupal.org and tagging them in, I don't know, whatever manner. So we can start collaborating on those components, because the problem of JavaScript with all the components is pretty hard to find yourself. And Drupal is doing one thing really, really right in the fact that it's keeping all its modules, all its communication around the code, let's say, in Drupal.org. So that's my opinion about headless, but I have a few more words, Howard. And the next thing I want to talk about is Zariz. Zariz in English, Zariz in Hebrew. Who can read it? Yeah, at least 3 or 4 people who can read it here. So for the Hebrew speaking, so this is one actually is a complete headless Drupal solution, and I'll explain why. The word Zariz means agile or fast, and what we did is we tried to approach a pretty big problem, which is content staging. And the problem with content staging is usually after around 30 seconds you hear the word Jenkins, where Jenkins should push information from one server to another. And I have no problem with Jenkins. I have problem with Jenkins when we're talking about content staging or when we're talking about content staging. So Zariz solution is actually talking about something completely else. It's talking about having all our content, all the branches in the content live on the same site. I wish there was like a big banner saying having all your content live on the same site. Oh my God. Everything is on the live site. What does it mean? We as developers, we are, best practices fanatics, right? If someone here would tell me that they are working directly on the master branch and pushing directly to production, we would publicly shame them right now. And the clients are coming and they're paying us $1 million to build the project. That's like Gizra's baseline. We start from $1 million. And they're paying us when we're doing best practices and hat testing and stress testing and whatnot. And then when the client comes before the release, we tell them, listen, just one thing. When you edit a node, just before you click save, make sure you did everything correctly because it's the live, it's the live site. Make sure it's working properly. That's kind of not fair, right? We are developers. When we want to check something how it works, we want, we're using Git, we're using Git branches. We can see exactly how the site will work, and we try to achieve the same thing using Zariz. So this is the site. I'm in example.com/live. That's my live branch. It's as if I said the master branch. So I have here 3 content, node 1, node 2, node 3. I have a snapshot. Zariz is actually built on top of organic groups. Organic groups is leveraging all the branches and everything. Zariz is just a thin layer on top of that, and it's basically just a snapshot entity that remembers what was the last entity ID. Obviously, it's not node-centric. What was the last entity ID that was created in that branch? So I have this live branch, and I have those 3 nodes. And now a privileged user has created a new branch called the dev branch, and they replaced node number 1. They actually edited node number 1 with another image, and when they save it, Zariz doesn't use the revision system. It's actually replicating the node, and it positions it over here, and the snapshots remember, okay, I don't know anything about node 2. It was created on the live site, on the live branch. Same about node 3, but node 4 was created on my branch, and then merged. So now I'm on the live branch. What was actually node 4 is now node 5 because we're replicating, but who cares? It's just node. And now on the live branch, I can see exactly how the content will look. And not only we were able to remove this entire thing of sending content from one server to another, we were actually able to see a full static, we were able, to see a full site preview of exactly how my site will look. So if I go to the dev branch, I can see exactly how the site will look using some not too sophisticated query alters, and then on the live site, on the live branch, I can see how it will look. And since it's using organic groups, then we're getting for free a lot of the goodies from organic groups, meaning that a branch could be private, for example, or I can have different roles and permissions inside the branch, who can edit content, who can create new one, who can merge it, and so on. And this makes a lot of sense also for commerce sites. So, for example, Ryan here, he knows commerce really, really well. But let's say that he has a site with 500 different items, and it's a Christmas Eve, and they want to change all the items. So what do you need to do? You need to create all the commerce products in advance. You need to have display nodes in advance, but make sure that they're all unpublished. And then on the right time, you need to publish everything, unpublish the previous ones, and make sure you do it really, really fast and, you know, accurate, because you have only one go. And you didn't have any site preview. You don't know exactly how it will look on the home page. Maybe you have a state site, another server that you can check it, but that's not the proper way. So that's Zariz. But I said earlier that Zariz is actually providing us a full headless Drupal thing. Since we have this snapshot, this snapshot entity, I know exactly which content has changed when. And it's very important when we're talking about sites with a lot of content. So if you know Jekyll is a great tool, but mostly for blog posting. If you try to add lots of pages, let's say 10,000 pages, and you change one character, when it regenerates, it takes a long time. Long time is, it might take a few hours. This is obviously not acceptable if we're talking about Drupal. Every time you change a node title, you don't want to, you know, wait a long time. What Zariz allows us to do, again, through grant tasks, which are completely optional, you don't have to use it. Through grant tasks, we are able to take all the HTML, all the images and everything, to grab them and to create a static site. But they're able to do it in a scalable manner. Why? Because that grant task will call the Drupal site and it will ask it, hey, what has changed since the last time that I contacted you? And Zariz will answer just node 5 and just the homepage, because the node 5 appears on the homepage. No crazy logic going on there. So the grant task will just, you know, grab node 5 and re-grab the homepage, and will be able to regenerate everything. Now, how are we with time? Okay, we're good. Since I do have a projector,
Right, it's not
working.
You gotta put into standby.
try to turn it on.
Yeah, thank you.
You going to post your paper pad online?
I don't know, online. That's it.
Oh.
I think it's but I want to show you something that I never do, which is a live demo. And the reason I like to do live demo with Zariz, that's the only thing I do live demo, is people don't really believe it works. So okay, so just dim the lights. Great. So, this is a RIS with a RIS example enabled. Again, if you remember, similar to RESTful example models. I don't care about creating stuff and in theory you could. It's always important for me to have example model that you can work on. If you go into the RIS page in GitHub, you can actually see that there is a link to Simply Test Me, so you don't need to even to download it locally. You can make it work over there. So over here, what we are seeing is the live branch, and we are seeing different content that was created, and I know it's the live branch, it's indicated in this ugly toolbar, plus in the URL. So now let's create a new branch, and we call it new content. You can see I've already practiced it. It's not the RIS, something. So the toolbar here indicates that there's still no content over here. So I can create new article. So I create a new article. I'm here under the new content branch, and you can see the new node that appears here. Obviously, if I will go to the live, if I go to the live branch, I will not see that content. Again, we are using some query alters. Even the query alter is opt-in. So for example, what you're seeing here, for example, it's views. And that view, we just add a small tag. We call it, we add a tag called Zariz, and Zariz is taking care of showing the right content. But on the left, you can see a nice debug block that tells you, okay, those nodes are originating from the live branch. But that node actually belongs to this branch, the new content branch. And then I can go ahead, since I'm a privileged user, this is controlled by OG, and I can click on merge this branch, and now it appears on the live branch. Let's create another last example where I create a branch, but like I said, edit content. Create another branch called entity reference. Okay, so over here, let's say I'm gonna create a new article with reference, and I'm gonna reference the American Robin. And over here, in another branch called entity reference, I'm gonna edit that American Robin. And even though you can see in the URL that it's node/4edit, you can see something I didn't take care of yet. I'm actually gonna clone this node. When I'm going to save, it's not going to edit the node number 4, it's going to create a new one. So American Robin, new title, and I'm going to save it. So again, on the live branch, American Robin appears as it is. On the entity reference branch, American Robins appears with the new title. And here the article with the reference in the edit content branch is still referencing the content called American Robin, because it doesn't know that there is another branch that has changed it. But now if I will go to this branch that has the new title and I will merge it, it is now appearing on the live branch. You can see the new title. And if I will refresh this page that referenced the American Robin, it has the new title, as if I did conceptually an automatic git pull from the live site into that branch. Yeah, I think it's enough. You should be pretty excited by now. If you're not, then I won't be able to explain more about it. I hope I answered your question, Howard. Thank you for yeah, so that's it. That's the headless and other stuff. And I think that the conclusion the biggest conclusion that I have, and I try to demonstrate it through these 3 examples, is this is something we are seeing in Drupal itself. The fact that up until now, a year or 2 ago, we thought about Drupal. That's the godly Drupal, the monolithic thing. We cannot rethink how stuff is working. Content staging, for years we've been seeing the same over and over, what I call wrong solution. And then there is itself, if you look at the code, if you're a developer, look at the code, it's really very little code. It's mainly you know, conceptual shifting on how we are looking at things. And I think we should take those conceptual shifting and try to tackle every aspect that we currently work with in Drupal and try to improve it in a standardized way so we can all enjoy it and not reinvent the wheel over and over again. Thank you. So, questions? Yeah.
Are you allowed to clap at box?
Sorry?
Are you allowed to clap at box?
Yeah.
If you're impressed.
Okay. What happens to all the previously created nodes? Is there a cleanup routine at all, or do they all just exist forever?
There's currently no. I mean, I'll tell you where I've reached with Zariz. Is more than a proof of concept in the sense that you can see it's actually working. I didn't take care of everything, right? So you could probably do some cleanup, but who cares?
Opted not to.
Okay, I mean, you have that node in there. You maybe, I mean, I don't know.
Maybe indexed in search.
Well, I mean, again, I didn't take care of it, but there is the idea of the notion that the system knows what is the master branch. So you could potentially say, make sure that you index only nodes that have reached that master branch. You could say there is a pull request that I created that is waiting for my own review that say only privileged users can see other branches. Normal users can only see the live branch without the live prefix. So you could actually say, I really have like a real site going on, content editors. I'm thinking about media sites, newspaper sites.
How would you do that?
You want to see the code? I mean,
have you got permissions? Have you got public permissions?
I mean, yeah. If you're an authenticated user and you don't have the right permission, then you won't be able to see that prefix and see other branches. It's OG, so I can take advantage of private services.
And the prefix you would remove by just.
I would just
point there.
Yeah.
How are you handling the entity reference updates? Is that like an entity save sort of hook, or do you have some sort of abstraction?
What I'm doing is here, I'll enable the development also to be enabled here. Basically, entity reference has one column called target ID, right? So what I'm doing, I have an entity reference behavior handler. It sounds more fancy than what it really is, which basically adds another column called UUID, and it on saving of that field, it makes sure to find what's the UUID and remember it. So actually, the node ID is less important, but it's still working. I mean, I'm just on hook entity load. I make sure to populate the right entity ID. So.
Okay. Maybe I don't understand the UUID.
Yeah,
are the UUIDs
so every piece of content, every node has a UUID that was created. Plus, on the entity reference, you can see target ID, which you probably know already. But there is another column called UUID. That's the UUID of the referenced entity.
And your clones have new UUIDs?
My clone has the same UUID, different entity. That's how I recognize it.
Yeah.
So the 2 pieces of content have the same UUID?
Yeah.
Yes. And
that's what I was trying to figure out.
Yeah, it sucks. Maybe I should call it normal UUID. Yeah, you're right.
Right.
That's why I think I was able to bring it to a good place which is actually working, and that's the reason I'm here actually in Amsterdam, to get people excited about it. The only way there is, or a similar solution will work, is only if the community, embraces it and somebody smarter than me says, hey, it's not UUID, maybe we can change it, and it's early on enough that we can change it. So definitely there are a lot of stuff I'm not taking care of, but I mean, what I do take care of is already pretty well tested. So.
It's a branch-specific UI, so you can call it BS UI.
Yes.
I'm waiting for that pull request. Yes. Yeah.
Just a quick question. I'm not quite sure I got where the Jekyll part comes in and why it's Jekyll and not some other static site.
It's not getting okay. It's not getting here. I mean, there is started from me trying to break Jekyll into Drupal in the sense that Drupal would be the content editor and it would be piped into Jekyll. It was a complete failure, but I learned a lot from it. Plus, I understood the problem of if we do want to make static sites, the problem of the site generators is that it would take a lot of time to regenerate. And that's why there is part of the solution, again, an optional solution, it's not mandatory, is to do it in a scalable manner, and the scalable manner is just regenerate the delta that was
just in time.
Yeah.
Okay, I have another question about the first part. Like you use Jekyll, and then you share the CSS code between both instances, like Drupal and Jekyll. So at a given moment you say, okay, client, now take a look at your site again, and then it's Drupal and not Jekyll anymore. But then you have 2 times the markup. Like if you get a change request, like I want to really have different markup for this block, then you have to implement it twice, don't you? Because what are you showing to the client then?
You're right. I do.
Yeah, well, that's not that nice.
It's not nice. I agree that solution might not fit every scenario.
Mm-hmm.
However, it's been working. It's working nicely for us when it comes to also for agile projects and also like fixed projects. Usually the changes are CSS and not necessarily structured. If you have a change, yeah, you might need to copy. You might need to
But
copy stuff.
so you copy stuff, but you still keep both instances
in the
running.
end, in the theme itself, the only thing that matters is actually the HTML, the divs and whatever. CSS is controlled by Jekyll.
Okay.
So you sort of lock the Jekyll, it sounds. But it seems like you, on most
I'm not-
projects, you build it with Jekyll,
I'm not
and then
locking
you
it.
copy the HTML over.
That's right.
That's when
But I'm not locking the
you
Jekyll.
continue to maintain the
I
Jekyll.
continue to maintain it. I mean, even when what you're saying sounds right in terms of duplication, but on the actual work, when we now need to, again, remember, we're all developers, we're all lazy, and I now need to have a markup. I really enjoy the fact that I have a grunt task that live reloads every time I change the CSS, and I don't have to hit F5. And maybe it's a small thing, but after so many years in Drupal, I prefer to have that run task to do that and then to copy the HTML into the TPL.
Okay.
I mean,
You can have live reload work Drupal in a theme as well, though. It's not exclusive to Jekyll.
yeah, the reason I'm using Jekyll is not just for the sake of Jekyll, it's more for the sake of I wanna get the markup as soon as possible in parallel to what's going on in Drupal. That's for me the biggest advantage that I'm seeing. Yeah.
This isn't really about headless at all, is it?
You got it. You got it.
I thoroughly feel like this is the best decision I made with my hour at DrupalCon, so I have no issue with that. But you had one slide which showed like web services and REST services and JSON and stuff, and you talked about building Angular JS sites, but that's not really what we've been seeing here. But when you build the sites and you're doing fully REST, you're using all JavaScript to load everything in Drupal, right? How do you handle the bootstrap overhead and like number of requests? Can you make it actually fast? And
first of all, I'm not building. I mean, we're trying to build some fully decoupled websites, real websites, not just for example. It's really hard, and I showed it through the example of the login. You need to take care of a lot of stuff. How do I manage the bootstrapping? Nothing too fancy. Bootstrapping happens, so I have some caching on the RESTful side, and having some caching on the client side. Should be improved a bit in Drupal 8. I don't know what the actual numbers are saying, but people are excited about it, so I don't want to destroy their hopes. Well, thank you for coming. It was fun for me at least.
Bye.